Otsukimi here. Who else would it be? This is Observations with Otsu for Monday, April 8th. I hope you've had a good weekend. I hope you had a good week, honestly. Because some of you guys, you maybe only see this once a week for these videos. Little bit different today. Today's going to be a lot shorter. Today's only going to be about charts today. There's no real theme today. I think the theme for this is total eclipse of the chart, which is kind of a play on words for total eclipse of the heart, but also the solar eclipse that's coming later today. It's coming in about 3 hours or so, roughly. Probably, I think less than that, but I'll be out during that time. So, gonna keep this simple, charts only. So if you're into that, that's gonna be really good for you. We're gonna look at the weekly perspectives on Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, Dogecoin. In addition to that, later, some preliminaries. Later this week, I'm gonna start getting into some more videos. I'm gonna do an altcoin weekly video. Probably on Wednesdays, I think. One reason that's been delayed is because I've been floating around with what day to pick. We have had a lot of hospital visits on certain days of the week, and so we're trying to juggle that around. But I'm looking at Wednesday, which used to be where the altcoin updates used to be, and then I'm going to have some thematic videos throughout the week. So I've got a lot of stuff planned. It's really just having the time to do them. And so, and I also hurt my neck over the weekend, so it's a lot of other things. So anyway, you don't want to hear all that. We're going to get into the charts, some small things in addition to that. And I won't reference them too much today, but link in the description. There's Nowhere Premium, which is my premium group that we have extra insights, a trading portfolio, extra videos just like this, and so you can look into that. And then you also have the Apex indicator, Apex script. It's called the same thing. Basically, my insight on the markets that is available for you to add to your trading view chart. So anyway, that's pretty much all the introduction and the preliminaries. Let's just get started right on Bitcoin. First up is Bitcoin, which always tends to be first. So what we can see here right away is this red line. I want to mention this first more than anything because I'm going to get rid of this, but this is the halving marker, and basically we have about 12 days left to the proposed halving that is proposed to go forth on April 20th. And so we will see where that goes. As far as the charts go, I don't know what kind of effect that has necessarily. Not really an expert at that. We did have some thoughts on what that would look like, but now that we have approached a new all-time high before the halving, those things go out the window, right? And so haven't really been very vocal about what the halving means anyway, but it's just been a good marker for me. So we're going to get rid of that. Now, second thing is that we've actually pumped pretty significantly already for the first day of this week. That is worth noting, but I'm also going to kind of disregard that for the rest of this video because we're going to focus on the weekly close. Most of my weekly perspectives go with the previous candle, the one that had just closed. And so with that, we had a bearish candle overall. And so, but one thing I want to also preface this to say is last week I was looking at this blue area right here. This is what I call a swing high order block, which really takes the liquidity area from the previous section, which was basically right here in 2021 when we went down, we came back up, we actually tested right at the top of that, and then we spent about 2 weeks underneath that, and then about 2 weeks ago we actually broke above that. And so that was really good news to me. That's what I wanted to see. That's a good sign of very strong bullish continuation. But we had an immediate drop down. And so I had my concerns. I'm going to get rid of this here, actually, because that's kind of annoying. And the one reason I had that concern, and I'm still talking about this last candle from last week, is that we had this high right here. And I'm going to be bouncing around just a little bit, but bear with me. And so you had this structure right here. So this is kind of where, actually probably down here, was what I was looking at. And so as long as we, we had the pump above, which was good, but we still held below this low, which was like, it's still good, but not like good enough for me. And so one of my concerns was with the candle that we had last week coming down and actually going all the way down below this marker, we were in danger of kind of deviating here. And so if you guys have known me for more than probably 2 months, let's say, You guys know I'm a very big fan of deviations, watching because those are very strong. And I'm also a fan of waiting until candles close to give myself confirmations on any sort of trend, trade, momentum change, anything. Okay. And so when I talk about some things, when I talk about deviations, when I talk about breakdowns, you got to understand that, and I try to mention this every time that I discuss this, but sometimes I don't mention that because I'm so used to saying that I assume that everybody understands that I look at candle closes. And so I think I may have caused some people confusion. Some people have, sold. Some people have told me they sold because of some of my thoughts about selling in the market. And those technically, that was on the daily, and we're still below that, so that's good. But the thing is, first of all, you shouldn't be doing anything positive or negative because of me. Okay. You are responsible for your trades. You got to be careful about that. Okay. I'm just giving you my insights of what I think about the charts from my point of view. These are what I say for the most part. And when I say, 95% of the time, 99 probably, is something that I do myself. One reason I started recording my videos is because I just wanted to record my point of view because it helped me chart coins. Because if I didn't record, I'd be lazy about it. I wouldn't check the charts, and then I wouldn't trade. My trade performance would be low. But you guys like the charts, so that's kind of how it kind of developed into YouTube and Discord, multiple Discord groups and things like that. So that's good. I have no problem doing that. At the same time, that's never changed for me. I'm always coming from the position of this is what I'm doing for me, and I'm showing you what I see. Okay, this is somebody that's been, I'm not the best trader by any means, but I've been here for 8 years, and so that does have to count for something. Or maybe I should have been rich by now and just left you all. I guess I don't know, but the point being, don't necessarily just do everything that I say because I'd never imply that. I'd never imply that. So anyway, going back to the weekly. So one of the reasons I kind of went on that rant is because we did come to the downside, and a lot of people, including me, were concerned. Now, we went back up. We had a amazing close. Okay, I went into Wednesday and Thursday with an idea that okay, this is going to look bad, and then Friday, Saturday, Sunday rolled around, and we retraced very good. This went really good, and so this was basically your weekend setup, and we broke above that zone, and so this was your weekly close. It closed above this bar. This is very important to me, and so some of you guys might say, well, this is just some stupid liquidity bar that you made, by the way. So why does it matter? Well, it matters because this previous area has basically been broken through in its entirety. And so once you break above this zone, and so let me just get rid of this. A lot of people want to look at this, at this pump, all right, we went to 63, celebrate whatever. We went to this pump, now we're at 69, like, oh my gosh, this is great, and people are celebrating, but I thought it was a little bit premature because we still need to go above this zone. We need to kind of close above it with significance. We actually broke above and then we came back down. And so this little struggle, which you can kind of see more on the daily here, was a sign that we were not necessarily ready to go, and we still technically are not. I think we're warming up. I think that this looks good, and I'll get into that with a daily perspective here in just a second. But we also need to be mindful, like the way that supply and demand works. We need to overwhelmingly have the demand to continue higher. And this consolidation marker is basically telling us that we're not ready yet. That does not mean that we are bearish, okay? I'm starting to disassociate with a lot of vocal CT personalities, influencers, whatever you want to call them, that consistently talk about bullish and bearishness in a wrong light. And there's not many there. I mean, there's not a whole lot of people, and most of you know me from Twitter. Most of you that do know me from Twitter know that Twitter can be a very toxic place, for lack of better terms. But I want to mention that to say most people have no idea what they're saying. Well, in general, they have no idea what they're saying. But most people have no idea what they're saying when they say something is bearish or something is bullish. And when I say other words that could be used as synonyms, they come up with their own interpretations. And so for me, this is about supply and demand. I'm not saying that this is bearish. I'm not really technically saying that this is bullish. I mean, on a technical pattern, you have a trend consolidation, and so I would expect continuation. This is a continuation pattern. We had a bullish breakout on this, which I'll redraw here in just a second. In fact, I can probably just draw it now. And so you had this line here to the downside and here to the upside. So this is your continuation pattern for anyone that has tried to learn TA for more than 2 weeks. Understands that this is a consolidation triangle. Okay, and it may take different words, but this is a continuation pattern because you have a trend, downward consolidation, uptrend again. Okay, and a lot of people are very vocal about this. A lot of good educators in the crypto space are vocal about this as well. So that's important, but this also is still within the range. And so that's basically what I was talking about with the weekly and why the weekly is so important to me because we were locked within this range. Now, we closed above this range. That's really good. And so I apologize for bouncing around everywhere, but we have maintained this retest. This was a pump and this was a retest. Okay. And so when you get a pump and when you get a retest, that is a very good thing. That's exactly what I want to see. Okay. This is bullish right now. Now, I'll later in just a second give you an asterisk here because it's not always bullish here, but we'll take a look at that here in a second. So anyway, very bullish setup. I like this a lot. I like the retest. I was kind of nervous about this, to be honest with you, mainly because when you get a deviation at the highs, you get something like this, and then you go down for a long time. And so this is why deviations are serious to me, because just in this range alone was 140 days. So just keep that in mind. If we deviate, you're looking probably at least 2 or 3 months. Now let's go to the rest of this on the weekly. So first things first, we have an A-ring consolidation on the bear side that is continuing to occur. And so right now it's about 75% to 21%. So we have about 3 weeks of this bearish pressure that we could get. And so once we kind of eclipse that, no pun intended, we can start to really rally from there. And so this could take different forms. This could take the form of a bearish cross. Not exactly what I want to see, but that does give us an option to reload. The good thing about bearish crosses here, or the bad thing about bearish crosses here, is that it makes the full trend into a bear trend. Right now it's a bull trend with slight bearish momentum. The momentum has not done much because when you have a consolidation like this, which means that the black line is going down while the blue line is going down, that means we have a bearish consolidation, which means that the bears can apply more pressure to the bulls right now. So basically saying, we can pull. If you're a bear, you can say, I can pull down this bear or pull down this bull, and I can piss them off. I can have a higher effect, right? Because there's nothing bearish about this, right? So when there's nothing bearish about the price action, but you get a bearish consolidation, that means the bears have a higher chance to hitting the bulls with more effect. And so it doesn't mean that we're going to get bearish price action. It never really technically means that. That's where the bearish cross and bearish trend will come into play. Because a bottom line right here can never really have a full effect on the trend because it's a subtrend. But the bottom line is a subtrend line, and so when they flip, that the trend also flips with that. That's why that goes. Because if a bear, let's say we were just theoretically, going to go down to 45,000. So it's a minus. Let's say we drop there today, 37%, right? Eventually, this will get to the point where we will no longer consolidate, we will actually cross, and this will actually form a cross to the upside. And so that would be your cross. So there's a certain point where like a subtrend, which in this case is a bearish subtrend, the bears can only do so much damage, but they can do enough to really just like piss you off, so to speak. And it's not like there's a bear and a bull fighting or nothing like that. That's just all imagery, right? But the idea is based off of the Aaron and the way that it's laid out, bears have a minimal chance on the full effect on the market, but still have a decent chance to making this consolidate, making this chop, right? And they haven't done a really good job because bullish price action has technically continued for the past month. Now, let's go to RSI. RSI does have a small divergence here. That is worth considering. That being said, this candle is not complete yet. So we need to be mindful of that. But it's still up above the zone. It's above the 80 marker. If it, I've been adding some footnotes to RSI because a lot of you have misinterpreted me. And I don't think anybody is wrong about that. I need to do a better job explaining that. But first of all, we need to come back down from the 80 marker first. That's the one thing. The second thing is we would need to come back down below the origin of the divergence, which was right here at 68.8. If we can close 68.8 on the weekly, then that divergence would have its full effect on the market. That would also create a deviation in addition to that because we would come back down to the blue zone. And so we can kind of rest for now, knowing that that may not happen. And if it does happen, we'll get the deviation anyway. So I've been all over the place for the weekly. I greatly apologize about that because this is my first real time looking at the charts for this week. But overall, this is looking very bullish. Okay, I don't want that to be neglected. I don't want you to think that I'm bearish here. I'm actually very bullish here. As long as we hold this, this is looking pretty good. In addition to that, we actually got a little bit of momentum here. Bitcoin and Ethereum have a lot of momentum here, for the past couple days at least. And so that's also having an effect on the market. You can see here, which we'll get to Solana. Solana is almost red for the day. And a lot of other coins, like like ETH-based coins, like FTM and even GRT to an extent, a lot of these are doing okay. And so, WIF and Ton are doing good too. But that's part of it. We'll talk about that in Ethereum. So anyway, let's go to the daily first on Bitcoin. And so this is the continuation pattern. I mentioned this in Discord that I think the 12-hour shows this a bit more sufficiently. And so that's pretty much, I won't draw it necessarily, but that's the breakout with this zone. So actually I will draw it out because we have a confirmation close on the 12-hour. And so that's pretty good. That's what I like. In addition to that, we got the bullish cross on the Aaron. So that's what I'm talking about. Like we had a good effect for the bulls, despite the fact that the trend was bearish, but they had so much of an effect that we actually created a cross. And so that's good. So if you wanted to long this, I think right now would be a great time to do so because you wait till the candle close. So you could long this at any time. So you could do this one or two ways. You could put your stop loss somewhere within this zone. I would my personal thought process is somewhere in the blue zone right here because again, if it closes, then that's a deviation. I would even be much more likely to do it below here at this low. Now that's a pretty wide stop. And so what you can do, and I talk about this in Discord, that you could put a trend line right here on the zone, mark it up like so. Your target is about 86.6 with an R value of 2 and a move up about 20%. So that's good. Now, you could also do that second theory that I talked about and have this within this zone right here. And so now your R value almost doubles with the same percentage. And so that's what I'm looking at on the daily as far as long positions. I think those look really good. I really do. And so that's pretty much it for the daily. I was concerned about this zone down here, but it looks like it's well protected. Now, sometimes, not always, but sometimes, and enough to cause me to tell you this is that sometimes when we get a pump from this, we actually, if we don't go up right away, sometimes we drop back down. So keep that in mind. And so that's one reason why you need to have things like stop losses, and things like that. So just keep that in mind overall. But honestly, this is 12 hour, but the daily is looking pretty good. Another thing to watch out for is if this stays above the zone for the daily. If this closes below, below 70,500, then this would probably cancel the long position on the daily at least. As far as the 12 hour, that would probably be your discretion, but that's completely up to you with that. So anyway, that is Bitcoin. Let's go to Ethereum. On to Ethereum. Now, I've shared my fair share of frustrations with Ethereum. The first thing is that we are not at price discovery. A lot of people are kind of, I think, too optimistic as far as Ethereum goes. I think there's a lot of potential. I think the potential has not been there. I've purposely neglected Ethereum throughout the past 6 months because my eye was on Solana and Bitcoin, and that has helped my portfolio. But now it is starting to be time to pay attention. Now, my second frustration is that we are not at price discovery, or no, I think that was part of the first one. But the second real thing was that we're kind of in a weird spot right here because if you try to analyze this from the entire order block perspective, like we're kind of above the zone, but we're kind of floating here. See what I'm saying? Like we also can't look at it from this perspective because it's kind of above the zone. So we're kind of, and I can look at them from other options here, but you see my point. The point is we're kind of in a weird floating area, and it doesn't really quite make sense where we're at as far as this goes. And so another way to analyze this differently would be to look at this from this liquidity zone where we get the resistance. I think that's the key part is that we are at resistance right now. Now we are consolidating at resistance. And so that is a better sign than not. That's a more of a sign that we could be going bullish here. That would have to be a break and hold of $4,000, and so we'll see where that goes. But we're still under that right now. Now there's no real other lower option here. You have this mini consolidation here, but I don't. That would be kind of nitpicky for me to do that. This makes sense because we had a break. We had a touch here way back in 2021, had a double top. We had a break above this zone deviation. This was your clear sign, and to this day, it surprises me how many people missed the top sell off that you should have done on Bitcoin Ethereum. Now, I'm not making fun of anybody by any means, but we had for Ethereum this was very clear. We had a double top, we had a breakthrough deviation, okay? And Bitcoin had its own fair share too. It had the weekly bear div or the 2 and 3 week bear div. And so we anyway, that was part of the reason we sold off. And now we're at this resistance zone again. And so this is significant because we have a double top here. This was basically it. So deviations don't have the same integrity. And so the thing is, well, it's like, well, we're almost here at all-time highs. Like, well, yes, but also no, because yes, it is all-time high technically, but as far as this is your main point of strength and struggle. Once we get past $4,000, more so probably like 4,100, it's going to get easier to go to all-time high. This is the Bears' last line of defense. Is basically what I mean. And so I do think that we'll have a harder time breaking 4,000 than we do 5,000, or probably 4,006 or 4,000, 4,007, because this has had more strength. This had the double top that we looked at and the deviation. Deviations are very, very, very strong. The more I look and study and research, deviations are like my top one or top two, like patterns that I look for that have a lot of meaning to them. Because it shows you everything. It shows you that the supply or the demand was not ready, depending on your point of view or where you're at in the markets. Also shows you significance for the order blocks and things like that. So anyway, all that being said, let's look at last week's candle. And so we could nitpick here, but we basically went from top to bottom again. So now we have this order block structure. This did not break down like Solana did, and I'll get to Solana here in just a second. So now we're kind of within this zone. Now, interestingly enough, we are already on the verge of breaking through already. And so that could be a good sign. And so we'll see what happens with that as far as next week goes. But we had the bearish structure here. We actually went down pretty significantly, and we retraced. So this technically, so, excuse me, just kind of stuttering today. This technically counts as a hold, weekly hold. So this is good. And I've stressed in Discord yesterday how, I even made a long signal for people in the free Discord. And so if you haven't joined the free Discord, you could join it down below in the description. Or if I posted this on Twitter in the thread, I guess. So right now, going pretty good, but we held, and so that's good. The bad news of the good news is that we still have 6 weeks left to confirm this, right? But this is looking pretty good. And the thing is, if we close above the zone and we don't close above 38, 80 basically, we're still within this little gap. And so we could close at like 3,800, and that's not really good enough for me. I would prefer to have that close above to be super bullish, but this is looking pretty good. I like this hold here. As long as this holds on the weekly, you have no reason to think that this is going to be, super bearish. Now let's go to the ARIN. The ARIN is at 71% bullish to 0% bearish. So we have a bearish consolidation. The good news is that the bears have no strength. Don't want to repeat what I said for the Bitcoin section of this, but bears have no strength, but they do have the ability to push the bulls down. So far, this is, you know, fine. There's nothing to be concerned about. But, since we had the consolidation, we have been down. Once the consolidation basically started at the 38 marker, now we're kind of low. So nothing really significant with that. The only thing I would be considering is that once the consolidation ends, we're going to go onto a wedge formation, and that's the max bearish trend formation. So we could see some acceleration, or at least an attempt at acceleration to the downside. But again, as long as we hold that weekly, it's fine. RSI, looking fine. Nothing really significant with that, to be honest. Now, here's the daily structure. This daily is quite complex, to be honest with you. But also, there's a way that we can quantify this in a much better way. So first things first, the best thing that I see is that you have this liquidity structure here, and then you also have your trend line structure here. And so that basically makes your ascending triangle formation very cheesy formation, but it is a formation that works. Now, based off my experience, once you get a big hook like this, it does tend to reject, so just keep that in mind. But you have kind of almost an Adam and Adam pattern here. Excuse me, and those tend to be more. Those tend to have a pretty good effect. Any sort of the Adam and Eve, Adam and Adam, Eve and Eve patterns, they tend to work very well because they're basically just different forms of rounded bottoms. That's all they are. So when you get a double rounded bottom, that's typically, the best formation of those. And I know a lot of those could be, interpreted differently, but it's they tend to work out well because rounded bottoms tend to have a good demand structure, basically. So, but we'll see. With this, if you wanted to wait to long this and you haven't done so, I would wait until you get a break of this somewhere. About probably 3,700 is where I would look. Now, we talked about this, I think, last week. We had this consolidation structure. So we have a bullish consolidation right here. It's a bear trend, but bullish consolidation could lead to a bullish cross. Looking like that will be the case. It will be the case if we hold above this line because this is the highest high. So if we get above 36.78, which we're very close to doing so, that will give us to a bullish flip. Now, one thing I talked about last week in Discord was this small structure here. So once you get these lines and they start going down like this is a sign that something big is coming. In this particular case, this was a bull trend that hadn't ended up being a bull consolidation. And so this does give us a little bit more of an idea that we could have a bullish impulse in this case. So, but looking pretty good overall. Honestly, Ethereum has kind of changed its tune relatively rapidly. I was very critical of Ethereum for the past month and even upwards to the middle of last week. But I'm surprised to see it's kind of, doing, it's behaving very well. So we'll see where this goes. But I think Ethereum and Bitcoin now look really robust, and maybe they're going to, kind of take charge over the next month or two. So we'll see where that goes. Let's go to Solana and see what's up with that coin. All right, let's talk Solana. And we'll do a little bit of Dogecoin, maybe not as much as I originally intended. So we have a similar situation here with Ethereum. So if you want to like kind of copy this like so, we're kind of in a we're almost kind of in a retest point. Like we did test the lows here right at the mid. But other than that, we're still kind of in this middle structure. So this doesn't really help us. And it's a little frustrating at times because for the most part, 99% of the time, you can find an area of interest of where the price goes. That's the whole point of supply and demand is you can find out like, where the price is going to go because whether you believe this or not, 99% of people, whether it's the stock market or whether it's crypto, will not follow like a chart. Like they may see a chart online, like if you're, let's just say, let's say something stupid, right? Like Robinhood, right? Like if I'm just a regular no coiner on Robinhood, I see the little squiggly line, all that, right? But I'm not like measuring it, right? And so it's interesting because most people, I mean, I think there's only 40% of people that actually have stocks. And how many of those people actually look at a chart, versus, and how many of those that do look at a chart actually look at it the way that we look at it. So it's going to be very few. And, and I also know that based off my analytics, there's very few people that actually look at charts or look at this YouTube channel or even even really popular YouTube channels versus the rest of the world participants in stocks and digital assets. Okay. It's just kind of how it is. Now, for some of us, that is an edge. But what I wanted to say is that psychologically speaking, the price is going to behave where it makes sense, even without those people, buying at those price points, right? So what I mean is, you know, double tops happen not because people are looking at waiting for the double top and going to sell when it hits the top. They just recognize like there's some sort of collective behavior among human beings that allow them to do that just remotely, really. And it's very fascinating, and that there's a lot of better people at me that can discuss that better. Now, this pertains to Solana because we're kind of in no man's land. This is where like we don't really know what's going on here. And so we kind of just got to isolate this and look at this from this structure. Now, the last week candle, so we can see here we had this order block structure right here. Technically, we broke above this structure on the upside, then we actually, but barely. I can see where we could have held that. Now, but last week we definitely closed below that. And so I'm kind of bearish on Solana. It's very fascinating because 2 weeks ago I was completely bullish for Solana and I was completely bearish for Ethereum. Now I'm the opposite. And maybe we'll look at Solana ETH pair and just see what's going on with that. But this is very bearish to me because we closed a whole order block just down below, and we didn't even really struggle with that. Whereas Bitcoin and Ethereum, they made recoveries. Solana did not, and so that is part of what I'm looking at. And so I'm probably bearish here for longer than you might think. Now, how long? Let's look at the air and just look at that. So we have a 78 percentile and 0 percentile on this, which is a bear consolidation leading to a bearish wedge. Now, if you take this 71, divide it by roughly 7, and so you're gonna get basically 10, almost 11. You're pretty much 11. Then you're gonna add 2 to that, 2 for confirmation of a flip. And so I need to make a video on what that means. But basically, you take your 7 plus your 2 is 9. So we have a potential of 9 weeks of non-bullish price action. Potentially, that would be the max. Okay, that could invalidate tomorrow. That could invalidate 8 weeks from now. But 9 weeks max, I'm looking at. So we need to recover this zone. I can't stress enough how I'm kind of shifting away from Solana. I think a lot of the meme coins and it's all fine. I think those are still doing relatively okay, but I think by and large, the market psychology and the participants are going to start focusing elsewhere. And with Ethereum starting to warm up, we might see a shift back to Ethereum, especially with network congestions on Solana. And I know some people have related those network conditions to the RPC for Phantom. The problem is most people are going to be using Phantom anyway, and they're already used to other wallets on Ethereum. They're just going to migrate to Ethereum. So we'll see where that goes. And you also have Base. You also have other things as well. And so just keep that in mind. I think Solana might lose some market share right now because of the chart and because of the conditions with the congestion and things like that. But we'll see where that goes. Now, um, where could we drop to? Now, the interesting thing is we do have something right here. So for the weekly structure, we're kind of within this zone. I would say we need to break below 172 on the weekly to really think about anything super bearish. So that's the good news. We do have some protection here. So as long as that holds, I think that we're okay. In order for me to be fully bullish on this, I would say we just need to recover, 200 on a weekly. I think that that's technically it's 202, but I think 200 is is good enough for this layout. So we'll see where that goes. We did have a bearish divergence, but that's gotten validated so far. Um, Nothing really significant with the weekly structure, but it's just kind of limping over, and that's something that I don't really like, honestly. Now we do have this zone that this needs to recover from. So technically, we're in kind of a gap. So if we can play that, I know a lot of people hear me often say, just play the break of the range. Sometimes I say it a little haphazardly, but this is true right now. You just have to wait for this break right now. And to be honest with you, like Solana has had a pretty good pretty good run. So I think right here, I think this is healthy for this just to cool off and let other coins, run, and you could look at those coins instead. So not bearish here, but I'm not bullish either. So going to the daily here, this is what makes me think that I could be a little more bearish, however, because you had your double top here. You're kind of having this struggling marker right here. And so that's, again, if we get the drop down, nothing really changes versus the weekly. If we get the drop down below, the 170, 2 or 170, uh, you're going to probably get some acceleration down to maybe like 144, 145. And so I don't think that that's out of the ordinary, especially when Bitcoin and Ethereum start to take over. Perhaps if they take over, a lot of other coins are going to suffer. And I think Solana, and I say suffer sarcastically almost, because Solana has been by far one of the healthiest chains, coins, and ecosystem, whatever you want to call that. Basically, the entirety of Solana's presence has benefited very much, even with WIF token, things like that. It's been going very good. So I think a retrace would be healthy. A lot of meme coins on Solana look like they're about ready to go 30 to 50% to the downside. I still think that could be the case. The problem is people will hear that statement and think that I'm really bearish on them. I'm not bearish on them necessarily. I don't think that that 50% is going to happen within 1 week. It could happen within 6 months. Like, it could take 6 months to do. And so that's very troubling. But I've seen it before. We'll probably see it again. Just saying. So anyway, as far as that, Solana is, I'm neutral on Solana, but I'm waiting for one of these two things to play out. And unfortunately, that could take another month to do. And so just keep that in mind. Anyway, let's go to Dogecoin to round out the video. All right, Dogecoin, I'm going to keep this a little more simplistic because, for time, but also because of the nature of the coin. So we had this zone here. I'm going to get rid of this too. Let's see. So we kind of had this zone on the weekly, and this is pretty important. I think this is probably a better option. But so the good news is we had this long consolidation structure for over a year, almost 2 years actually, over 2 years, sorry. And we broke above the zone. So that's a good thing. The weekly structure looks really, really good for Dogecoin. The recent drop down, we actually touched the swept. We actually swept that, came back up. So really good resistance on this, or a really good support, I should say. Apologies. Big consolidation here, 85% to zero. It's one of the biggest that you can get. So sometimes that means that we could come back down and sweep that low at 16.8. So that is a possibility. Setting bids on there may not be the worst idea because, again, you have the weekly support structure to counterbalance that. Now we're kind of in a weird zone here at the top. Again, there's nothing here really of significance. Very similar to Ethereum, Solana, and so we're kind of playing with that. But overall, this is looking pretty good. We do have a slight divergence here, but it would need to break below this blue box to have an effect based off of the origin, which was the origin was right here. So it would need to break and lose 16.9, which would break and lose this weekly support. Let's go to the daily here. And so you kind of have a wedge formation. Like, I don't want to really force that, but that's just the first thing that I see. And so this is what that looks like. So the good news is you can play the break of this. There's a reason why I say that so often is because typically once you get a formation, it works in tandem, and once that structure breaks, then you can play that from a different point of view from that new structure, basically. And so it's kind of like if you try to go into a building like every day for the past 20 years, and then all of a sudden that building's demolished, you 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 may be able to like close your eyes and think about how to go up that building in your mind, but you can't physically go up that building anymore because it's not there. Okay, so even though you have that path memorized, you can't actually do it, and that's the same thing with the new structure. Once a structure gets destroyed, a new structure comes in. You can't operate by the old rules anymore. You have to operate by the new rules. So probably not the best example, but it is what it is. So bearish cross right here. So we do have an option for this to either come back to the downside. Um, this would be the setup with that. You would probably want a break of this, 21 cent, 29, but it's really 21 cents to hold that to kind of invalidate that bearish cross and turn into a bullish consolidation. If not, we could reject right here. I'm not actually that bullish on Dogecoin right now, based off of what I see right now, because this could come down. It needs to hold 21 cents to kind of get some sort of continuation out of this. RSI looks good though, a 50% bounce, holding that steady, looking pretty good. So anyway, that's Dogecoin. Quick and simple with that. I do have to run, but that is sufficient for the week and what we have seen with Dogecoin lately. So just a summary to round out the video. So Bitcoin, we have this continuation pattern. This needs to hold on the daily, but this is the two long positions that I looked at. The weekly is looking very good. The weekly structure held above this zone right here. Actually held above the highs of this zone. So we're completely above the old structure from 2021. Looking pretty good as far as the daily layout. Actually, I presented it on the 12-hour. Is this what that looks like? This is currently holding on the 12-hour, but this also, if this breaks below before the end of the day, these would get invalidated. So I think Bitcoin looks pretty good overall. We might see a little bit of a retrace to the rest of the day, and I think that may be normal. Going on to Ethereum, we had a structure here. We almost had the Adam and Av pattern that I talked about. We need to hold above 3,700 to make this continue. And it looks like that we may get that, but just keep in mind we might reject here. But overall, weekly still looks really good for Ethereum. Going to Solana. Solana, I am a little bit disappointed on. We had the breakdown of this. Now we're basically, I talked about how that is slightly bearish, but I'm neutral overall because we're kind of in a gap zone between $202 to the upside and 170 to the downside. And then Dogecoin, we had a really good weekly structure, looking pretty good overall, holding that zone, but we're kind of stuck within this momentary area between 21 cents and anywhere between 19.8 and this red trend line from the wedge. So a lot of range bound areas, right? And that's kind of the nature of it, because we've had a pretty good trend for the past 3 to 6 months, really, probably more like 5 months. So a lot of these range break plays are basically just consolidation plays. And that's as simple as it needs to be, honestly. We don't need to make it more complicated than it should. So, anyway, that's the video. Let me know what you think. I'm happy to discuss this more. I hope you have a good week and enjoy your day. Take care.